Welcome to Time Out Coaching with Coach Tony Garbelotto. Today we are welcoming a rising star of British coaching. She is currently the associate head coach at St.Francis College, Brooklyn, and head coach of Great Britain under-16s girls. Please welcome Coach Jenn Leedham.
Hello, thanks for having
Hi,
me.
Coach. You've obviously you've been integral part of British basketball. First as a player, and then obviously when you went over to college in America. But so let's talk first about those early experiences as a player, and also could you maybe talk maybe that there were some times where that has actually had some impact in your early coaching career.
Yeah, definitely. I was born and raised in Ellesmere Port. I'm really proud of where I've come from. And yeah, we started playing basketball. I think it was for the 2000 Millennium Youth Games. We big netball family. My mom was a coach netball, and we just kind of did basketball for a little bit of a joke. And somehow Jimmy McGinn crossed paths with us, and kind of like the rest was history a little bit from there. But I was always really lucky that Ellesmere Port has this real little niche of basketball that like Robbie Pierce was involved, Mike Burton, Jimmy McGinn. And it was kind of like, I mean, I grew up in Ellesmere Port and never really heard of basketball. And then you had the Chester Jets that were kind of around. So it was a real awesome community to be involved in. And we didn't really have National League when we first started. So we actually went over to Manchester, and it was coached by Jeff Jones for 2 years. So I've really been lucky from I mean, I wasn't young. I was 15 when I started playing, but I had really, really good coaching when I was younger, which I think allowed us, me and my sisters, when I say us, and then even the girls around with the background of netball, to kind of project us forward at a pretty fast rate and catch everybody up.
Let's talk about someone very quickly that a lot of people don't, that maybe the general coaching public don't know much about, which is Jimmy McGinn. I mean, everyone would have heard of Robbie Pierce. Was
Yeah.
multiple Coach of the Year. Won all of the trophies with Chester. I had Mike Burton on about 2 months ago, and Mike is a legend in any
Mhm.
type of British coaching.
Yeah.
But Jimmy, his name is, synonymous with that area with success. But we don't hear much about him, and obviously he's now a little bit more in the background.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, what it was like, with him as a coach.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I credit a lot of who I am as a person to my parents, but I wouldn't be the basketball player I am if it wasn't for Jimmy McGinn. And the biggest takeaway from me with him was he coached us like we were basketball players. He didn't coach us like girls. He just coached us as basketball players. He was so tough on us. I remember my best Jimmy McGinn story is like we'd play like local league with him. And then when we finally started to play national league, like we were good. And I'm like not really that person to say that, but we were beating everybody. I remember being at Bury and we won by like 30, but we gave up too many layups in the fourth quarter, and he made us do defensive slides after the game on the court. Now what you have to remember too with what goes with Jimmy is
Yeah.
he had a fantastic group of parents too that like supported that. Like you do that today and it'd be like, my baby, why are you making them do slides after the game or something like that? But like he was tough on us, and the parents supported that because they just wanted us to be great and be the best versions of us as basketball players and people. And it was just that time that I had at home playing for him is a massive, massive influence. And still to this day, if I go home, I will always call him or his wife Edna and make sure I go and stop there, because I am beyond grateful for what he did for me individually in that kind of era of basketball.
you're
He's
totally you're totally right about those type of things now. I
yeah,
mean, there were times, in my early coaching career, we would do some of the same things. We definitely would run after the
yeah,
games, but we've also done some stuff at halftime. And I know that some coaches didn't like that, but there is definitely, many people know my views on this subject, that young people definitely are a little bit softer. Forget about the actual parenting type stuff as well. There's definitely young people are not as don't have the fortitude that they did have in the past, but that's another story in itself. So you've got this. I think I'm going to come back to this kind of all of these key characters when I asked you about these influences early on. But so you started a little bit later than some players, some girls, but you know, you were successful as a player. What was the moment that you knew that you could potentially go to America, and who was facilitating that? Were you going out to camp in the summer? What was the situation with regards to that?
Honestly, I'd say nothing really came about it. Like I was, so I was like 15, had just started playing, was in local league. And then it was like, at the time, I don't know if they do this anymore, and I probably should know this, to be honest. I'm a little like, I'm very honest, so it's not always a good thing. We had like the north of England, like it would always be at Lilleshall. And I like when I was 16, I was in year 11, like I didn't make that Northwest team. Like I didn't make it. I remember I got cut because I couldn't make a left-handed layup was the reasoning. And I was devastated. And so America was not even a thought then. And a lot of people didn't really go. And there was like Andrea Congreves was playing, and a couple other people had like thought about it, but there wasn't a ton of people. I know like maybe Joe Claydon had gone over, like a couple people a little older than me, but it wasn't really a big thing. So then when I was 17, kind of was in the England squad, and then a couple of people started talking about it, and I mentioned it to my parents, and they were like, absolutely not. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did my A levels, and then after my second year of A levels, like Joe was in a GCSEs, my sister, and she was like, so the thing that my parents were talking about was you could go together. Like it was more a thing for them that if we went together, I think it would ease their minds a little bit. My younger sister Kirsty was in year 10. So we just kind of started talking and planted some seeds. I know I'd played for Manchester with Jeff Jones, and just, I honestly don't know how Joyce Jenkins, this lady who lives in Maryland, came across to our family. I honestly can't remember the connection there, but she had these multiple schools. Like there was one school for Joe that was like out in Colorado, but she would go by herself. And then this like prep school, lo and behold, Cheshire Academy came about, and it was like, oh my God, we're from Cheshire, England, Cheshire Academy, you can go together. And it just kind of happened that after I did my A levels and Joe did her GCSEs, we kind of went out together.
That's awesome. Who was your coach on the England team?
Ian Day and Nick Ibbotson.
Wow. Okay.
Shout out Nick Ibbotson. He is the best. One of the most loyalist England basketball people I know. Right. He is awesome. Good people.
Interesting. Great. So then you went to prep school, and is that, you know, obviously you started really improving. Do you know, any experiences you got there from the side, or you just at this moment you're like absolutely 1,000% as a player, you're not even thinking about the game in any other way? What was your
so just to backtrack before that, when I was home, like when I was doing my A levels, and it's funny because I think you had Ben Thomas on here. So when I was like 17, I'd passed my driver test. I'd whip in my little Fiat Punto, and I had like a Friday night coaching in Ellesmere Port was like primary school league. And I just like, you brought up in Ellesmere Port, like, and I think Ben touched on it, you want to give back. Like you're so appreciative for the opportunity you've been given. You want to give back. And that was like, we coach on Fridays with like the little kids. And then I happened to just take this like under 12s boys team that was like Josh McGinn, Jimmy's son, Ben Thomas, Lewis Thomas, like, and we'd go over to Manchester and play on a Monday night, and I coached this like little local league team, and it was awesome. Right. And then I coached actually the boys and girls one year and another at the Cheshire Youth Games. So that was like, I did coach a little bit, but I didn't really think anything of it, to be honest. I was really locked in on like my experience and me playing, and I really wanted to play professional and see how far that could go. And I never really thought, it was just something fun I did. And, you know, like when you're involved in a club like Ellesmere Port Panthers, I was reffing like local leagues and stuff, and just kind of like, just trying to be involved. And, you know, kind of like how Vanessa touched on, it was just a community that you get those opportunities and you just want to be around. And it was cool. And went to prep school, and honestly, prep school was a shock for me. Like my mom and dad are really, really tough sports people. Like everybody knows me, Paul will know who they are. Like we're so lucky to have them. But we trained that summer before we went to America. Like I don't even know, like we running every day, shooting all the time. And then I got to prep school, and it was like 3 sports season, you're going to have to play volleyball. And I was like, what? I played volleyball, and that was like, it was tough going away from home, playing volleyball. It wasn't necessarily the level we anticipated going to. It was like a couple class. It was like a class C, I think, and I think there's double A in prep school, so that was a little bit tough. But we once again really lucky to be surrounded by really good people, that really kind of guided us and took care of us, and yeah, landed on my feet with a college opportunity, and kind of went from there.
And that college opportunity was, how did that come about, and talk about that experience as well.
So we were really good. We were kind of undefeated. We played a lot of, we played some good teams, some bad teams. Not everybody was a basketball player at prep school, and I didn't really know what the college search was, so it was kind of just finding my way. And then UVM, University of Vermont, I'd been to see a couple of schools, and they kind of offered me, and it was a championship game, and they were coming to see me play, and I was horrible. I was absolutely terrible. I was turning the ball over left and right, and they pulled the offer, and I was devastated. You don't know what it's about, and I kind of hadn't gone to visit because I was nervous. I didn't really know what the college experience was about. And then Mark Swayze, who coached me in college, happened to be at one of our games a couple weeks before, and he just reached out and was like, "Is she open?" And this is my college experience, and even my whole coaching experience. I've been so lucky. Things just for me happen, and I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'm on my college visit at this little school in Franklin Pierce, in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire, and Newcastle, Durham Academy, is visiting and on the campus. And one of my really good friends, Laura Calder, who was on the under 18s,
that's Dave Calder's daughter.
Dave Calder's daughter, was on the campus, and I literally walked in the gym and was like, "Oh my God," and knew all these people.
Crazy.
And we scrimmaged and we played, and it wasn't my thing. For me, in my college decision that was super important was I wanted to go somewhere with impact. I didn't care about facilities. I wanted to go somewhere where I knew I could play right away. I could play as a freshman. I knew I wasn't ever going to be a good cheerleader and be that wasn't me. I wanted to go where I could grow. I loved the game. I not really had a ton of involvement. And
so who is that a personal decision? But of course it's a personal decision by you. Is that something that you decided, or had you assessed that, or someone had given you advice? Because I'll give you a name that extremely well, from the Northwest region, Ben Eves. Ben could have gone to George Washington to a mid-major and would have been a 20-minute player, straight as a freshman. And he takes the decision to go to Connecticut, University of Connecticut, who had just come off of 2 years before winning a national championship and had 10 future NBA 6, 10 and above players. And I never, I've always advocated exactly what you say about, look, it's not just about the name and, the spiel. It's about, what are they going to do for you and your game? How can they grow your game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was so late that I think I was very mature, for my age, and my parents are very supportive, but I kind of knew who I was and what I wanted. I don't know. I don't really know where that decision came from, if I'm honest. For me, it felt right. And I could see myself, for me, I always go and I'm surveying the situation. Where do I see myself fitting in? I'm not I came from Ellesmere Port. We played in a youth center where the backboards were terrible. And we had to spend the first 5 minutes of practice, avoiding all the spit on the floor from the footballers that were in before. It's just, I've never had the bells and whistles, and I don't think most people have that in the UK. And that wasn't something that was enticing to me. And it was always being a winner. And that's how I've been brought up, is to whatever your role is, kind of you want to impact and be a part of winning. And I don't really know, to be honest. It's so funny. And no one's really ever really asked me that. It just felt right. That place for me.
so you go there and you have an incredible college career. Talk to me about that in some of the highlights. And
Yeah.
again, was there anything, talk a little bit about the head coach or the coaching, was that impacting you, resonating with you as a player? Just talk about that situation.
Yeah, I mean, my freshman year, I couldn't stand him. I thought he was absolutely crazy. I thought like we were building a culture and we were building a program, and we tried, like, he lit sage in the locker room. Like he tried the whole Notre Dame like tap the thing, and it was just like we were just in a growing period of like he took over. He had his players in, he had old players in, and if I'm not gonna sit here, like, did transferring cross my mind? 1000%. But I've always been brought up to stick it out. You make unless be realistic. If you make a commitment, you see through that commitment. And it got better. Like we got better players. We like gelled. The culture got better. He kind of changed a little bit as a coach. Like as a coach, he was very, very strict, and it was his way or the highway at first. But like as we got older and he trusted us more, and we earned his, like, he'd earned our respect, we'd earned his respect. There was a common kind of mutual ground of where we were going and headed. And those first couple of years, even with Jo coming in my sophomore year and her freshman year, it was really hard. I think people always remember the good times, but we had some terrible practices, we had some terrible days, we had some bad losses, but we pushed and persevered and believed in a common goal. And yeah, my senior year, we played in a national championship, and it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, for sure.
Was there a specific style that this coach was using, and that some of the stuff that maybe you have taken?
Yeah, he was very he put in like a 4 out 1 in, like kind of very early before it, like I felt like we were one of the first to kind of really do that. We had one
sure, in America for sure,
yeah,
because in America, even in this day and age, even in NCAA Division I men's basketball, there's not every team is 4 out 1 in. There's still I still see 2 posts. I still see someone standing on the low block on either side of the floor. I'm like, what the hell?
Definitely. So yeah, it's crazy. So he moved us, and it was hard at first because it was like, that's chemistry. It's like learning where to play. Like you've gone from being really structured, but he was he was a really, really good X's and O's guy, and his practices were always with purpose. They were challenging, they were competitive, and we kind of just built from there, and we believed in what his vision was. And he was very understanding. Like I had a very weird dynamic with him. Like I remember one time we'd always bring in an Australian, and he asked me like, my junior year we didn't bring somebody in, and we went to the Elite Eight, and he was like, I'm thinking about bringing it. It's my senior year, thinking about bringing in an Australian. Like, what's your thoughts on that? And I was like, well, we just went to the Elite Eight. Like, no, I don't think we should bring anybody in January. We moved forward. We had a great January, and like we focused on us. And he was like, you're insulting my recruiting skills. And I was like, telling you the truth. We just had like a really funny dynamic. But still to this day, I still talk to him. He's actually back at coaching at Franklin Pierce now. He's such a great man. He's so, caring. Obviously, he has his differences with people at times, but his X's and O's and his knowledge of the game is phenomenal, in my opinion.
At the end of your senior season, like you say, at the national championship game and stuff, what's your thoughts after that? Now, are you starting to think, I want to be a professional player, or like you had said, that was your goal? What was the dynamic there, and what was your next stages before you ended up going into?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, so it was 2009. In 2009, there was World University Games. There was the Olympics were on the table. So I was like, yeah, like that's my goal. Had never been in the women's squad. I played under 18s, under 20s for Vanessa Ellis. Her first year that Vanessa coached under 20s was my last year with under 20s, was the first year they had it. That was like, I thought Vanessa Ellis was like an absolute rock star. She was like this trailblazing, honest as they come, like doesn't care to cater to anybody's, like, she just she's gonna do what she's gonna do, and she's gonna own it. And I love that about her. Like she tells it how it is. She's not gonna I feel like in the UK, sometimes people flip flop a little bit of who they're talking to about what they say. She's going to be who she is. And she was like, didn't care who played for what club. She was starting the best five. She was playing these people. And we did really well. And it was like, I really enjoyed playing for her. It was, and she's someone that I thought, wow, like, yeah, I would love to coach like her. And that moment, but right before I graduated, the athletic director from Franklin Pierce came up to me and he was like, you know, we'd had a really successful year. We'd had a couple of successful years. We won 2 regional titles. And he was like, listen, I'm a person that likes to get my ducks in a line. Your leadership is phenomenal. Have you ever thought about coaching? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, obviously I coached at home. Like, I'd love to coach. Like, it's definitely something like down the road I'm thinking of. And he was like, okay, just like, good to know. I like to have my ducks in a line. So I was like, okay. And then I didn't get picked for the World University Games at first, which was kind of a little bit of a blow. And then somebody, I don't know who vouched for me, but like kind of, I like got a late kind of invite to the camp, which was really great to be a part of. And I remember we were home for a couple of days. And Joe got a call from Coach Swayze being like, I've took another job. And I was like to my parents, oh my goodness, I think the athletic director is going to ask me some way or some form to like coach. And this is Division II, where mostly at the time, the assistants, especially Franklin Pierce, was a GA or part-time. And lo and behold, like 2 hours later, the phone rings and he's like, offered me this phenomenal opportunity. Like, it was, I was going to be an assistant. They would make me full-time. And it's in the Northeast 10, which is such a good conference.
Sure.
And they would mentor me. And in 3 years, I would be the head coach if everything went to plan. So I was like,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was it then, you know, in that respect.
It was so like, I have so many people. Like I had, you know, my people and friends, a lot were in the States. Then I had this opportunity of like the Olympics is in London. Like, can I make the 12? Like, I went to a training camp with Tom. I went to the World University Games in Serbia. I played and made that squad. And I felt like at that point, I was also playing my best basketball. But the best thing about my parents is like, it was like, make a pros and cons list. This decision, we want to be your decision because it's a really big decision. We'll support you, whatever you want to make, but it has to be your decision.
Yeah. So that World Shooting Games team was Tom Mayer that coached that.
Yeah.
That must have been one of his first. That was his very first, you know, event that he coached.
Yeah. Was
Tom, that
Ken, Damien, and Vanessa.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking, do you know, was that one of the where was one of the first camps for that? Do you know that? Can you remember? Can you remember if it was in Manchester?
Because all our camps were in Manchester.
Yeah, I actually was at one of the first camps, and I'll be honest with you. You know, I walked out of there and I was like, wow. You know, you're talking about, you know, staying true to just coaching players, not worrying whether they were female or male. You know, I said to myself, you know, I could see why he's been a success because he's literally coaching like he's coaching men. And he just wasn't like, he didn't back down on anything. I mean, it was hardcore.
And the amount of tears in that first camp was, I have never in my whole entire life or career felt as sore as I did that after those first 2 days. I like couldn't move. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so hard. But what he did for British basketball in that moment and that time, he was the perfect person for that job.
That's really interesting because that's exactly what Vanessa said as well. You know, so that's a really interesting statement. So you get involved in coaching. You know, what's this kind of transition? You know, I'm assuming you still love playing, which, you know, that's a tough thing to resolve. I mean, we've all been there. You know, I was, you know, younger and I'd, you know, come off of some ACL injuries. You know, I love playing, and sometimes you're out there trying to demonstrate a skill, and you're getting more, you know, kind of confident that you can, you know. And I've even seen people like Nick Nurse, you know, believe that they can play even against the very best. So I mean, how did you resolve that kind of, you know, like all that energy you had, that you were playing the best basketball and now you were being put into this different role?
Yeah, I'll be, my first year was like, it was definitely a blur. Our team was, we were number 1 in the country for like 16 weeks. I mean, Joe was the player of the year that year. And I was so like, I don't think I hope I do, but we were 32-2. I mean, who does that? Like, it was an unbelievable experience. And it was my first year. I'm coaching the best player in the country. I mean, Joanna's phenomenal. I will never give her any praise to her face. She just knows I love her. But like, she's special, and she was from a young age, and she was then when she was in college. She just has this ability to make everybody better. And she's such a good leader, and she walks the walk. Like, she talks the talk and she walks the walk, and she works hard. She'll guard the best players. She'll do whatever it takes to win. And I was so lucky to be a part of that as a coach. But the one thing that was like, I didn't realize, and this might sound really daft, I didn't realize really what coaching was. So I just thought like, oh yeah, you go to practice, and then like, what is he in the office all day? It was like game prep, game scouts, paperwork, recruiting. I was so overwhelmed
Right, sure.
that like, and like, I'm first year head coach, and like, Coach Hancock was awesome, and he mentored me, and Bruce Kirsch mentored me, but like, there was only him and I. It wasn't like Division I where there was like 5 people on staff. It was Batman and Robin against the world, and we had to do everything, and driving all over the country, and it's it's Division II, like, so it's a different budget. And yeah, like, that's what makes you figure out like if you love it. And I was like, you know what, this is a lot, but I'm coaching basketball, I'm watching basketball, I'm watching film, and this is like my job. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Not a lot of ex-players or players that played at a really high level, like at college, and when they go into coaching, they really don't understand what is really what it's all about. They do think that they're seeing you 2 hours a day, or what the extra hour you're doing with individual workouts. They don't realize how much it actually is. So that's really interesting. So, two quick questions before we start talking about all of this coaching in American college system. So you've talked about some of the coaching influences early on. Is there anyone else that you want to mention that you kind of really resonated with you? And then more importantly, what were you starting to think about as a coach, from a philosophical standpoint? Were you thinking, I want to be 4 out, 1 in. I want to, be a very open offensive coach with, transition or defensively led. What were some of those thoughts?
I think people early on, I think why I was, even when I was in college, every time I went home, like, we didn't have summer school. So every time I went home, I had some form of involvement with basketball, whether it was with Ellesmere-Port, or I know one year, the summer of 2008, I did an internship with the Cheshire Phoenix. I don't even remember who, to be honest, was the head coach at that time.
It would be Paul
Smith.
Paul
Yeah,
Smith
and
was their
Peter
coach.
Hawkins.
I know that because, no offense, but that was when I started at Everton Tigers, and I was beating them. So I'd gone through to Robbie Pears getting beaten me. So at that time, I was always going to Northgate and winning all of the most important games.
Hilarious.
So
yeah, well, Peter Hawkins, they had this thing in schools, and I like coached
Hoops for Health.
Hoops for Health.
Hoops for Health.
So I was like, from like kind of learning how to run a practice and whatever, like, I was kind of shadowing like Rich Murphy. He was on the team at the time, and he'd go in and do this a lot. And I just went with him like all over the place on summers, and like, we just go together, and like, he'd run a session, and then he'd be like, okay, now you're going to do this one, or take down here, run this drill. And like, I got a lot of experience, and I really enjoyed it. And like, it was what was really great for me, and I kind of like really figured I'd love to, whether it was training or coaching or whatever it was, and training wasn't really a big thing back then, was like, I love to see the improvement. And it was like primary school, it was like little kids, but like, when you constantly keep going back and you're doing things like, they can't dribble with the left hand, but now you've gone back in 6 weeks and they're like really confident dribbling it with the left hand, like, that was a massive reward for me. And he also, like, I don't know if this is an Ellesmere-Port thing, but like, I just felt like I had people around me that always threw me in the fire to kind of make me figure it out. Like, there was no coddling. It was like, okay, you're going to go down here with these 10 kids, like, run this session. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, you just figure it out. And I was super grateful for that. And I think when it comes to coaching philosophy, is funny to me, because it's like, okay, is it culture? Is it like off the court, on the court? I think on the court, I'm definitely God God heavy, God, or I think you win with guards, no doubt about it. I think you win with guards. I don't enjoy playing with two post players whatsoever. It drives me absolutely crazy. And then I think for me, from a defensive, I'm definitely more defensive orientated. Like when I was, Joe and Kirsty were unbelievable offensive weapons, but my thing was always growing up was defense for sure. So I'm definitely a defensive minded person. And I don't believe I think you can have an understanding of the game and be a good defender. I don't think you need to be the fastest or most athletic. I think that helps, but I think, and my dad all the time would be like, you have to want to play defense.
Yeah, you do.
So it's definitely a mindset. And so I'd say, yeah, definitely. I think I took a lot too from like Tom had some really good stuff with like opening up the court because he came from Australia with big shoot threes. And I feel like I've been around a good amount of people where I've took little bits from everybody, and I've been really fortunate for that.
Interesting. So now you're starting to get yourself, this early part of your coaching career. What, you do? How many years at Franklin PS? How many did you do? Three years.
So I did 3 years as an assistant, and then I got the head coach. I actually was announced the head coach April 2012 before the Olympics.
Wow.
So that was like really cool. Yeah. So then I was a head coach there for 4 years.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And, so the transition from assistant to head coach, talk a little bit about that. You're on the sidelines, you're learning to be a coach. So you're doing breakdowns, you're doing scouting reports, you're doing all of that recruiting stuff. How are you thinking as an assistant coach in the game situation? And how are you relaying information to the head coach at that time?
Yeah, I think that's, I'm going to continue to say it and it might be repetitive, but I just was really lucky. Like I had there's like a group of people at Franklin Pierce, like Bruce Kirsch was the athletic director and he was a basketball guy. Steve Hancock, who was the head coach at the time and had coached me. And then David Chadbourne was the men's coach and he coached the women's side too for a little bit. So they were all really influential to me and really helpful. We talked basketball for hours, like you live, breathe and eat it over here. Like it's like how football kind of is in England. Like
yeah, of course,
just,
absolutely.
When you're in that and you're around that, and you kind of band together in this kind of community, and it's really cool that people are invested in you and want to see you do well. And I was really lucky to have that. Like Coach Hancock would let me run a practice or let me run a drill, or this is your scout, I want you to lead on it. And he gave me a lot of say really early on, and I was super fortunate because the girls that played, I played with all of those girls until I was a head coach, and I was their starting point guard. So I kind of already had like a leadership kind of voice from that perspective. And it wasn't like, I think it was I was really lucky that it was known and I was like mentored into it, and it was like a natural progression. So it was very organic.
Sorry. Were you going to coaching clinics or, like I talked to Donna Finney about, that ability, like you just said, to be able to talk to the men's coaches, the assistants, to talk to other basketball people when you're scouting and recruiting. So you're immersed, but were you doing clinics at that time? What were you doing to keep upscaling your knowledge?
The big thing over here is the Final Four. Like that is a major like tool from an education standpoint. And like your school sends you, like they pay for you, they want you to be there, and it's it's literally like 5 days of just intense basketball. You hear different people talk, whether it's Gino, whether it's Pat Simmer on the court, or like Dawn Staley, like, and all these, like nobody's too big and everybody wants to give back to the game. And that is like, for me to be at a Final Four and wherever I was at, like Denver, like Nashville, wherever, and like I'm seeing like Tara Vanderveer like walk out here or whatever. It was just, I was so grateful to be supported by our school to want me to go to those things.
Sure.
And that's like, being at the Final Four and in those moments, that's better than any, like, obviously there's clinics like the big schools run like clinics to go to, and they'll show practices. And, you know, it was before kind of social media was really big. So you had to like go in person. And, but the Final Four is definitely the biggest thing.
You just reminded me, were you able to ever get to, did you ever think about going down to see Gino and coach on the floor? Were you able to do that?
So I think it was my second year, we played UConn.
Oh, wow. Right. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. And he, you know, he's the real deal. Like he comes over like, oh yeah, you and your sister, hey, how's it going? What you did, and then when I was like going through all like my green card stuff, Gino wrote me a letter in support of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So that was like, that's a really cool moment for me. And that's something that I'll keep forever. I mean, honestly, he probably walked past me in the street, which is totally fine. But like, it's Gino, so I don't really care. Like, and the thing that's really great too is what I did as a division assistant and coach is there's a pocket. Like when you're Division II, they love for you to come to their practices. So I go to practices all the time. Like, you know, Division I, they're practicing. We're in that like October 15th at Division II, and they're starting practice. So I would go like Maureen McGarity, who like Dave McGarity, her dad is the head coach of Army, and they just played Army and Holy Cross like a few weeks ago. I would go to Maureen's like practices. I would go to like, you know, nobody like BU let you come in, like, and I had like an abundance of good people that would let UMass Lowell, like a lot of Division I schools that would like invite you in or whoever. So I did that too, which I think, you know, I think a growth mindset is something that I have. And I think what's the best thing about being over here is there's always somebody better.
Yeah.
Like there just is. Like you're not, that's great, you're doing that in your environment. I mean, unless you are like the Dawn Staleys and the Gino Oriemas of the world, like there's still so much more for you. And I think even them, the best thing about them is they know there's still so much to learn. And I think you always just want more and you want to keep learning. And the minute you get comfortable, you it's not a good thing. So you're challenged.
Definitely. So you become the head coach. Talking just briefly about that. I mean, that's a big jump. It's completely different now. You're in charge, of complete philosophy of everything, in a game situation. So you're calling plays, you're calling timeouts. I mean, what were some of the early trials and tribulations there?
Yeah, I mean, people ask all the time, like, are you ready? And I'm like, you're never ready. Like, when are you ever ready? You just like figure it out. And like, if you mess up, like my thing for me is if you mess up, just own it. Like nobody's perfect. I think when you try to make out like you're this like perfect person that does nothing wrong, it's not relatable and it's like disingenuous and it's hard for the kids to relate to too. Like, and I think, I was really lucky I had a great group of girls that worked really hard. And we had an environment where winning was almost expected. And I think they had that within themselves too. So it was kind of like, it was a very player-led program at that point, which for me, they were super respectful and they wanted to keep this legacy that had kind of started to build, go on. And it was really like a cool thing to take over. I mean, was I nervous? Absolutely. I was like, oh my gosh. And then like, I think one of my first conference games, the guy who was my assistant, Steve Hancock, who coached me, he like had some back surgery that like had got messed up and couldn't coach. And Joe was visiting at the time because this was like 2012 for some reason. She didn't have a team after the Olympics, which was quite crazy. And that's like a whole other story about like how she got in touch with her agent, because I had a recruit on campus and her uncle was an agent, and he was like, Joe's your sister, how does she not have a team? And I was like, and then now they work together and he was her agent for however many years, and she was over helping me and she coached that game with me. And I had another, like the men's assistant at the time kind of stepped in and helped me. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, but you can't, you've been there, like you have to just fake the funk to an extent and be like, all right, we're here, we're rolling, like let's figure it out, like play hard.
I learned that one very early. It's a funny story. I have a real quick funny story. I was at 5-star at Pitt 3, one of the best back in those days, was like really the best. And it started raining and Garth came over to me and he said, you're the young British coach, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, you're going to the podium and I want a 20-minute talk on international basketball. And I was like, I'm from Britain. I'm not really, I don't even know anything. I'm like, just started coaching like 2 or 3 years earlier. But like you said, you just got to go out there and just sell
Yeah.
it, and own it. And that's what I did. But, it's not a full basketball story, but
Yeah.
one kind of. So,
No,
yeah.
100%. I say that to my girls all the time. Like, whatever you do, just do it with confidence. Like 9 times out of 10, if you point this way, the ref's probably going to point that way too. Just own it. Like, who cares?
Yeah, that's a great point. Any other real key moments in this 4 years? I am speeding through some of these things, but kind of like you say, regrets or things you learn. I got to be better prepared, for out of timeout plays, or something that you really thought season to season you got better in. What was anything that comes to mind there?
Yeah, I think looking back now to like my experience, I think I definitely would have done like situations a lot more within like practice. I think that's really important. And I just think there's a fine line with coaching, with kind of being able to run a practice or a team and make them feel confident, but also putting them in the pressure cooker to be prepared. I think I sometimes put them in the pressure cooker more than I did build them up with confidence. So I think if if my girls like that I first coached saw me coach now, would be like, oh, you're so soft.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Um, and then just, I think as you learn, you look back and just like different strategies. I mean, 2020's hindsight, like when you look back and I should have called a
Sure.
timeout there. I think every coach probably does that. But
Mm.
you know what else too that I do regret? I think, and I've gotten better at this, and this is something I really put time into, and it's hard to do, but it's a focus for me mentally, is I wasn't in the moment. And I look back at my time at Franklin Pierce, and I was so, as a young coach, I think you're so focused on, okay, I'm going to be a head coach, this head coach. Now I want to be like, I want to get to Division One. I want to get to Division One. And I think I wasn't in the moment and enjoyed some really cool achievements that I was so worried about what was next.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, oh, I mean, we played Division Two, like all 3 years as an assistant. We had phenomenal players, and we went to the NCAAs all 3 years. And then my 4 years as a head coach, 2 out of 4 years, we also went. And it was, for Franklin Pearson, where we were at, to say like we went, I think 6 out of 8 years is an unbelievable achievement. And I just, in that moment, I didn't necessarily enjoy it the way I kind of looking back would have liked to.
Interesting. What was the catalyst to leave and go back as an assistant then?
So
to
it
jump
was,
the level.
yeah, it was, I mean, I'd looked about going maybe Division One, and people talked about it, but honestly, my whole visa thing was kind of like a little bit of a mess. And Franklin Pierce, it's tough to get into it because I don't really want to like talk badly about anybody, because that's not really like who I am. But it just like, it didn't work out there. Like it was from like, when you talk about visas and green cards in the United States, it's very, you have to be on top of your stuff. And I was at a private school, which like I loved and I was super grateful for, but like, there's certain wages, there's certain contracts, and there's certain things that needed to be handled. And it wasn't done like that. And it was just too risky. So I made the opportunity. Like, it's actually my teammate from Franklin Pierce, who was a senior when I was a freshman. And she was at Adelphi at the time. We coached against each other. We had a really cool bond. She was awesome. Like, I'd call her like, oh my God, we haven't won this game, da, da, da. And like she called me, and it was just like a really cool like relationship we had, where we'd kind of go back and forth. We were in the same conference, but like if we played each other, we wouldn't talk to each other for a week. Like there's just that common understanding. And she got a Division One job at Wagner down here in Staten Island. And she was like, look, like I want you to come along. And I thought about it and took some time to kind of really reflect, because I hadn't really taken any time. And then I was like, let's do it. So I ended up at Wagner in, I think it was 2016, maybe 2015 or 2016.
Sure. And was that, you're obviously immersed in the college game at this moment,
Mm-hmm.
so you knew what you were probably walking into. But was
Yeah.
it still another level, the players been slightly better, or, what was what were
Yeah,
the
I
things that
mean,
were different there? And
Division Two is super competitive, and the Northeast is awesome. It's just a completely different beast at Division One. It's
sure.
just a completely different thing, from like money to expectations to staff. Like, it's just different. And the cool thing for me that I was most excited about is, like, I'd been in this environment where, I'd been at Franklin Pierce since I was 18 years old, and I was now, whatever I was, 20, 28, 29. And I felt like I just needed to kind of leave the nest. And
Mm,
the thing that I was most excited about with Wagner was it was a rebuild, and we were completely rebuilding. I'd never really been a part of that. And I think when you do I was like a part of it as a player, I guess, but not as a coach. Like, the culture was built, the standards were set when I took over, and I was really lucky to I just had to steer the ship. I just had
yeah,
to still
sure.
continue recruiting players and just steer the ship, not ruffle too many feathers, and just keep it moving. And I think building, you really learn a lot about yourself. So I was really excited to be involved in that. And that's what Wagner was.
Am I right in thinking that one of the biggest challenges, even though it's a challenge in any college environment in America, is recruiting? Were you heavily involved in recruiting at Wagner, and was it the arms race that it is?
I mean, I think that was something that for me at this level, like, when I think if I look back and like talk about this, like, the Northeast 10 is really good. Like, and we played Division 1 teams, and we beat them. Like, we beat Vermont. Like, my first year, speaking of first games, like, my first game I ever coached, we beat UVM in an exhibition. And it was like, oh wow, like, so I knew that. But then when you get to Division 1, and especially now in like 2015, 2016, and 2020, like, now is crazy with social media, like, there's all this hype. So you get caught up in, like, the amount of people on Twitter, like, this person's got this offer and this person's got that offer. And I feel like we could have just kept recruiting the same players, but you felt like you needed to kind of compete more with like Stony Brook or like Vermont or whatever, those teams, to get these players. And it's like, I felt like we probably would have still had a niche at like Division 2 and getting those players to just come play Division 1. But it's definitely competitive. I think it's, I mean, listen, it's great coaching, but let's not all be fooled here. Like, it's the players. Like, I think the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick is the perfect example of that. Like, it was Brady and Bill, and no disrespect, he's unbelievable, but Brady's in a Super Bowl.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a great
So,
point. Yeah, I mean, especially in college, because you're always trying to get an edge
yeah,
with a player,
mhm,
and you have this,
yeah.
there is the whole variety. So one of my questions was, were you able to utilize your, that this international background that you got? Because, I do know, I know most of the British coaches that are coaching in America in the college systems, and they can conveniently, go home. Were you able to do that in any sort of way, or more importantly, were you able to utilize contacts abroad more importantly?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm really grateful for my opportunity, and I always want to, give opportunities to international players. I know, and I relate, and I know what that's like to go through that experience. I mean, even my Franklin Pierce team, we had international players. My Franklin Pierce team, we had international players, and then Wagner. I mean, there's a girl who's a senior over there now, Kalia, who played for Jackson Gibbons. Like, she came over and played. We had a couple internationals over there, Australians, and then, I mean, half of our team right now at St. Francis is foreign to international. So
Right.
yeah, it's definitely. But the lady I work for right now, she's a really big. We have New York City and we have dorms in New York City. That's a massive sell for an international kid. You say Brooklyn to a couple of Americans over here, it's not exactly always a sell. So,
Okay.
it
That's funny.
depends, and it's been interesting, and it's been really great. I've been really grateful to have really good opportunities in the States and outside. I mean, I went out and coached a camp in Australia one summer where I got to do that, and that was a really good experience too.
So
Um,
now I'm just sorry I'm moving you
No.
on a little bit. You're at St. Francis now.
Mhm.
What was the obviously you're the associate head coach
Mhm.
there now, so that's again another step up.
Yeah.
What describe a little bit about your role, even though we're in a pandemic, so it's not the easiest of things.
Yeah.
And what's a typical week look for Coach Leedham?
Yeah. We practice every day. We have to have one day off a week right now, which is typically after a game. Our games, like it's hard with pandemic, like before the pandemic, you'd be out on the road watching high school games, recruiting, kind of getting kids come in for official, unofficial visits and stuff. But right now we go in, we meet as a staff, we go over film. We do a lot of film individually with the girls. It's very focused because we can't go out and recruit right now because it's a dead period. It's very focused on our teams. And I feel kind of bad for the girls this year because it's difficult. We're tested 3 times a week. So you go in, I mean, starting this week, we practice. This week looks like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we practice. So yesterday we walk in, we have COVID testing when we get there. We have a staff meeting. Then we do film, and we was film after it was a bad loss that we had. So we did like a 2-hour film session, like
Yeah.
really kind of intense, and then did shooting practice, and then they go to lift, and then we meet as a staff for the next day.
Just talking about that.
Mhm.
I'm really, like always ask coaches, review game, especially game review. What are you doing? Are you doing like old school? You got to watch every play from the game, frame by frame, rewind, or are you, normally are you breaking it into sections? How do you and the head coach deal with that?
Um, This year's a little different because we like for the most part we play back to back, so it's like a really like short-term memory, quick turnaround, things we did well, things we didn't do well. Like there's a lot of players like think and associate film with negativity, and I think you can learn a lot and see a lot of positives too. So yesterday was a lot of we watched the whole game and it was like not pretty. Like got after the third quarter, it was like, all right, you get the picture, like let's figure this out type of thing. And it was like
Yeah.
rewind, like, and I think what we do a lot, which I think is I really like, is at the end of the game, our head coach isn't in the locker room. She doesn't go in and scream and yell. We bring it in, and she always tells them to take a piece of paper and reflect on the game. And when we meet,
Interesting.
whether it's the day after the next game, like bring like what did we do well? What do you think we need to improve on as a team? What do you think you did well, or what do you think you could do better? And like we kind of they get the floor first to speak about it, and they also get to hear what their peers say about it too. And then we'll watch, and for the most part we show like good things that we do, things we need to improve on, things maybe that are like non-negotiables for us that we teach every day that people aren't really getting the habit of. Like for us right now, we're young, spacing is a really big thing for us.
Sure.
um but yeah,
Closeouts.
it's really, yeah, exactly, it's just different to the game. It changes all the time, and I think that's the best part of coaching right now is you kind of have to be adaptable, and you have to kind of meet your team where you're at. Like if we're having a tough year. We're young, but a lot of the times we've got like 4 freshmen, 2 sophomores, or two sophomores, two freshmen, and a senior. Like we're really, really young because her first year, like they had 18 wins and were really good, but had 7 seniors. So we're definitely rebuilding. But it's cool because you get to see the growth from in the day to day kind of grind.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Just moving it on because I am conscious of your time, and so talk a little bit about it's actually a combination. So first of all, being appointed Great Britain under 16s head coach, and what that means, and how you feel that you're going to be able to go in and do something at that level.
Yeah.
And secondly, a little bit about the British basketball coaching in general. Do you get many young coaches, reaching out to you, or what's your thoughts in that respect?
Yeah.
Talk about maybe GB under 16s
Yeah,
first.
so the GB 16s, I was like, I've wanted to get involved. When Jeff Jones was doing the under 20s, I think 3 years ago, he asked me to be involved, and it just wasn't good timing. I was, you know, I'm all about giving back. So it's not a money thing for me. And I want to be involved, and I've always wanted to be involved, but it's got to be the right situation. Like for me and who I am, you can't be half in, half out.
Sure.
If I was going to do it, I want to be committed to it. And it's already hard enough anyway, because you know how it is over here. Summer recruiting is like a really big thing. So when Jeff was doing it, so we have 4 assistants at the Division 1 level. And so the 4 assistants, one guy his wife was having a baby. One was the GA, so she couldn't recruit. And the baby was due like right in the middle of summer recruiting. And then my other friend who was on staff with me tore ACL and was having to have surgery. So there was only me and the head coach that could really go out. And it was like super last minute. And I was just like, it's not going to work. Like, it's bad timing. I was really disappointed. It was like the under 20s, I think it was his first year he was doing it. So that didn't work out for me. So I was like, okay. And then, people had like mentioned, and then I don't know why I was always just like thinking like, yeah, I'll be someone's assistant. And I was like, well, why not? Like, why not just put your name in the hat to see if you can be a head coach? Like, what? No harm, no foul. Like, you've been a head coach before, like, you know how to run a program, experience, like,
absolutely.
If people believe in you, give the opportunity, then go from there. So, and I know like I do have a good group of people at home that are super helpful. Like Jackson, he's great. Karen Burton and Vanessa Ellis are like really helpful too. And like, Len and Kenrick have like reached out and also like helped me. And obviously there's a million other people I could name, James Veer, Steve Veer, like there's so many people. I don't want to like miss anyone or offend anyone either. And I interviewed with them, and I don't know, I don't mean this bad, but I don't know if like, I just was very real and authentic, and like, they were kind of like laughing at me when they were interviewing me, because they were just like, we've never had someone really be like this real. And I was just kind of like, it was kind of for me, like, if I get it, great. But if I don't, like, okay, like I'll just have someone recruiting, which I don't mean that bad. That's just like my story and my situation. I'm just being real, and it wouldn't be true if I wasn't real. And they offered it to me, and they wanted me to do the 20s at first. They assumed when they were interviewing me, like, yeah, so you do the 20s because it's college. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. They all come and they've already had bad experiences or have their opinions. Like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, no way. Like, and I love to teach the game. Like, I love to teach it. And I'm like, from Jimmy and the drills we always did growing up, and were a part of us, like, I think you can influence at that age and see major growth. And for me, I think that's what's kind of lacking in the UK game is, in my perfect world, and I've said this to multiple people, it's no secret, I would love to take an under 16 team and stay with them all the way to 20s. So it's my system, my philosophy. Like, we talk about what we don't have. Like, we don't have funding, we don't have this, we don't have that. Okay, so how do we overcome that? We overcome that by consistency. For me, consistency in basketball and coaching and life is huge. You want to lose weight, you have to be consistent with your working out and your diet. Well, if we want to be good at basketball, there needs to be a consistent message, because my message and my coaching philosophy is completely different to Kenrick and Len, and we learned that this summer. So I go and I'm preaching this for 2 years, and then they go to Kenrick and he's completely different to me. So now they have to learn this and change this. Yeah. So I feel like an advantage for us in the UK, and that's also investing in coaches and giving people an opportunity. Like, you have to say, you know what, we're committed to you being a head coach or being involved with this program for 6 years, which is a lot, and it's difficult to make a decision. I'm not saying that's an easy decision, but I think that's how you see growth.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very, clear vision, when I was the men's coach, that, we were gonna put a lot of core, both philosophical actions and also tactical actions, core stuff that was going to filter all the way down, 20s, 18s, 16s. And that meant that we didn't need to change the coaches as much, but then I still wanted the individual coaches to have the creativity to coach like they wanted to coach. But you're absolutely right. In a lot of countries in the world, they bring their coaches through the system with the teams, which is really, really interesting. I don't think the problem with UK is I don't think we're mature enough as a basketball nation for that to happen at this moment, or we don't have the strong enough leadership, one of the two, but we definitely need to think about some of those things, because it's really important. I really like that point there. Obviously, pandemic has crucified that situation, almost not happening, and I'm worried that we won't even get this summer either. So, hopefully you will be able to regroup and potentially be able to go in 2022, which, is crazy because it'll be a completely different set of girls. It'll be unbelievable. So, okay. And then just that last point on the British coaching, obviously you're like Donna Finney in some ways, although Donna was, she's obviously Scottish, she's, that you're kind of detached in some ways from the UK. You're obviously back as the under-16s coach, but thoughts on British basketball coaching? Any thoughts from your positive or negative?
I mean, I think there's so many talented players in the UK, and I think negative first. I really bothers me how we say it's an elite sport and yet we can't get funding for the girls to go to the Olympic qualifiers, or like it's a struggle. So I just feel like, call a spade a spade. It is what it is. Be where you're at and grow to something. Like, I don't know, like stop trying to put like a headdress on a dog and make it a lion. It's a dog. Like, we are where we are, and I think when you own where you are, like that's where, okay, and it's fine where we are, and we have a lot of people invested. The amount of people this pandemic for me to get back in touch with UK basketball was awesome. But I think a lot of people just do it to check a box also, and I understand that people are really busy, but there's people that on the daily reach out to me or regular that make an effort. And I think a lot of people, and it's hard because everybody has a different job and all that stuff, and I totally get that. But like, if we want to see it grow, we have to put more effort in. Like, people just love to talk about themselves, and I think that's it's horrible for me to say. But like, and I think there's so many great people, but I just don't think we ever give acknowledgement to anybody else. We spent like, and I grew up being like, don't talk about yourself. Like, if you're good, people talk about you. And I think people try to justify so much what they're doing and why they're doing it, that like, we don't celebrate like who's got what. Like, it's always like, well, why did he get that job? Not like, let's rally behind him. Like, yeah, let's make this the best team ever. Like, how can we help you? It's like, why did he get that job? And that's like everywhere too, to an extent, but I don't think as a nation we can afford to be that way.
Interesting. Yeah,
and I think there's some really good like young coaches. Like Jackson Gibbons is really cool. Like, I talked to him, he's very realistic with his players. They come over to America and they're super successful. I think it's great that Kremesh has got outside of the UK and he's like expanding himself and he's coaching scene different. And then there's like super random people who are like, I've never met Billy Bedo in my life, but like he'll reach out and like ask questions and like be, knows that I have a different side to things and like make an effort to form something outside. And I think that's really cool. I mean, even Alan Keane is like working on some stuff and he'll like reach out like and ask. And I think communication and like that stuff. But I think my one thing that I wish we would do is like at a trophy final, have like a coach's setting where like we get together and you hear like 4 people talk, like a round table. Like, I think that would be really cool to do. And kind of initiate, because I think people do have really good things to say, and I think people are really invested. Like, that's the best thing about the UK is a lot of people are doing this for free.
Sure, that's great.
And they're genuinely invested. Like, that's a lot, and that's like a really great thing.
We used to have some things, and certainly, I mean, I'm talking many years ago, 20 years ago plus, the end of season finals, where there would be, basically the playoff, BBL playoff finals, both for male and female. There were some coaching stuff happening there, but also even on an informal basis, everyone was there, so it's like the Final Four and you'd be meeting someone and then you start talking about stuff. And I think that's definitely missing at this moment.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing over here, that like, I think people are reluctant to share at home. Like, I'd give you my playbook. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, take my playbook. What do you want? Here's my practice. Like, we're too like, it's narrow-minded because and for me, it's like, you're not going to get fired if you like, maybe the BBL, like they're going to get fired if they lose, but outside of the BBL, like,
Well, they don't get fired in the BBL. I can tell
you're
you
going
that
to
for
be,
now.
you're going to be in your academy job for as long as you really want to, as long as you don't do anything crazy. That's why I love James Veer is like as real as they come. And he is like,
well, as I say now, you know, when it comes to, especially in 2020, 2021, you know, the secrets now are it's almost embarrassing to say that word, because, you know, when you got something like Synergy, where you could just, you know, you can clip, you know, 100 clips for 200, 300 for each game. It's ridiculous. You know, there isn't anything, you know, and like you say, you know, I offered my video playbook from last year, you know, because like, look, you know, you can go on Synergy and watch all those plays anyway. So it's not like you're learning anything, you know, like all the out of timeout plays are on Synergy. You know, if you really want to see that special stuff. So yeah, crazy stuff. Real last 3 quick questions. Favorite all-time basketball coach?
Pat Summit.
Okay, great. That's an awesome one. We haven't had that one, but you know, I spent some time at the University of Tennessee. I actually spent some summer camps there on the male side, but she was there as the women's coach, and it was like the men were like little people. You used to walk around, you know. That was her place. So
how amazing! Wow, that's so cool. What an amazing woman! Wow.
Incredible. Favorite drill, even though I know you've probably got hundreds of thousands.
Honestly, my favorite drill, it's going to sound really daft, is like 11-man 3-on-2 continuous.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I love that
drill. Love that drill. Yeah, great competitive drill, as well as all the other stuff that we're
but you always have to keep it for score. Like, there's always a winner.
There's got to be a winner in it. Yeah, there's got to be a winner. And then lastly, favorite saying or statement, something that the players hear almost on a daily basis.
I think I think I have 3. So my 3 are shoot with confidence. I think I say that more than anything. I say, don't talk about it, be about it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then I say, from all my coaching experience, I've never had somebody look back and say, I regret doing too much. Live in the extra mile. You don't regret it.
Okay, in the extra mile. That's an awesome way to end. Coach, firstly, I really appreciate the time, because, you know, I know you're extremely busy. This is a pressured situation, even with the pandemic. And to be able to do that, to be able to give back, I really appreciate it. We could go forever, and I hope that there'll be, you know, definitely a part 2, because I think that there's so much that we can get into, actually, you know, on what you do on a daily, a weekly, a season basis, on a technical tack basis as well. So I want to say thank you very much indeed, and good luck for the rest of the season. I know there's going to be some great things that happen in the rest of your career, and just thank you again.
Thank you so much. You know, hopefully when I'm back in the UK, maybe we can connect, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, especially as I live in the Northwest as well.
Yeah.
Still. Anyway, Coach, really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, take care.